I was reading your biography here, and I don't know if you've ever Googled yourself. Have you ever Googled yourself?
At some point in time, I did, yes.
Well, the internet said that few people have the same level of expertise and experience in this field. You've been involved in the beer industry for over 30 years as a home brewer, homebrew shop supply owner, book author, international beer judge, brewery salesperson. That's amazing.
The above, yes.
How did all of this get started?
Oh, it's a crazy long trip. Back in 1982 was the first time I took a tour of a brewery, of a commercial brewery. And having taken the tour and then participated in the tasting at the end of the tour, got to taste a lot of different beers. And, they offered them in a lot of different styles, which I had never experienced before. So coming away from that experience, I said, I'm just drinking this old style, this swill back at home. I need to find out more about the good beer, the good stuff.
Yeah.
I immersed myself in beer in as many ways as I could. Starting in 1985, that's when I first started brewing beer at home, because I figured the best way to learn about beer is to actually make it at home, learn more about the ingredients and the processes that go into making beer. And then from there, I started entering competitions. So I learned more about the judging aspect of that. And then eventually, a couple years later, I started writing about beer as a freelancer. And eventually that led to some book contracts and so on and so on.
What inspired you to write that book about homebrewing?
That was actually an offshoot. The very first book I wrote was called Beer Across America, but that's a different story altogether. The next book I wrote was Beer for Dummies, and Beer for Dummies sold quite well. And there was one chapter that was on homebrewing specifically. And the publisher got a lot of good feedback about that one chapter. So they came back to me and said, hey, why don't we now go ahead and do a book just with the title Homebrewing? So the whole book is about nothing but homebrewing. And so we did. And then now, 26 years later, I just published the third edition of that title.
See, you recently had a Spanish edition that came out?
That's one of the most recent ones that came out, but that's actually among several. It's Beer for Dummies is out in German, in Turkish, in some of the Scandinavian countries. I forget which ones, but yeah, it's out in several different languages.
So let's move to the pandemic. It's been about 3 years since we've all had to deal with that, and the beer industry as well. It's made a huge impact on the beer industry. And from your perspective, just curious to see what changes and trends that you've seen emerge during this time, and how do you see that brewers are adapting to these new circumstances? And do you foresee any long-term lasting effects on the industry?
Okay, there's a lot of questions. Let's go back to the beginning. Yes, it had an incredible impact on the industry, and not in a good way, unfortunately. We didn't see the damage that we were expecting at the beginning of the pandemic. We did lose some breweries, but the vast majority of them did manage to make it through the pandemic because they were small and they were nimble and they were able to pivot on a dime, which many of them did. A lot of breweries that only had tap rooms, all of a sudden they found themselves scrambling to utilize bottling lines or canning lines to put their product into package so they could then sell it at retail, because with the tap rooms and restaurants closed up, draft beer was going nowhere. So a lot of breweries that never had any intention of getting in on the retail game, they were forced to. It's either sell it at retail or close your doors. So that's the first thing that happened. Again, for the breweries that couldn't open their tap rooms, but they did have product to sell, selling beers curbside was very, very important to them. That's something that came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, everybody was selling curbside, and it helped a lot of breweries get through very tough times. Um, Looking a little bit longer term, obviously we've seen a slowdown. There aren't as many breweries opening up as there were, but breweries are still opening at a greater rate than they are closing. So that's a positive sign. But I will say that a lot of brewers, ones that I've spoken to personally, they have actually pulled back on their long-term plans. These guys had 5-year plans and 10-year plans. They were going to expand, open up a second brewery here and a third brewery there and go nationwide. And now it's like, nope, nope, not going there. It's like, we're going to just worry about, we're going to do cool things within our tap room. We're just going to expand our one brewery. We're going to introduce new cool beer styles. We're going to, just take care of the customers that we have here and now, and we'll worry about the expansion later.
I really enjoy learning about the history. So I just wanted to know if you have any memorable judging experiences, maybe like one of the first times you went judging, or some kind of situation where um,
There's
you had
been
to think on your feet.
there's been a lot of experiences over the years, of course, but there are a couple that stand out in my mind. Either they're funny or they're a little bit concerning in some way. Um, I remember one thing. I actually did a TikTok on this. We were, not me, but a table next to where I was judging. They were judging something. I think there were sour beers or fruit beers or something like that. But the beer was extremely, extremely overcarbonated. So when they opened up the bottle, it shot a perfect stream of pink foam about 3 feet into the air, and it splashed all over the table. It splashed over some of the judges, and it was rather comical. I mean, I'm glad I was not, hit by that, but it was pretty amusing. And it turns out that they had multiple bottles of that particular entry, and so what they did, with the expectation that the other bottles would do the same, they stepped outside, and this time they had people with cameras at the ready, and they actually caught a picture of this occurrence, that pink stream of foam up in the air. Is pretty cool.
So it's definitely was a memorable beer then, of course. Sure,
Yep.
you'll never forget that one.
Another one I'll never forget. This was at a homebrew competition, and apparently the person who submitted the brew thought it might be a good idea to put garlic in their homebrew. Well, I'm not sure that was a good idea. When they opened up that bottle and poured the beer out, it was so overpowering, that the stench. They actually had to open up the windows in the room where we were judging, and let it clear out. It was pretty comical.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
God, that's terrible.
for real. I don't know what possesses people to do these things.
So experimentation, there's only one way to find out if it's going to be good, and that's to try it,
True,
I guess.
true.
And judging, it must have changed over the years. What were um, the the qualifications like when you started judging to become a beer judge?
When I first started, it was 1986, and it just so happened the timing was perfect. I don't know how many people are familiar with the BJCP, but that's the first year it was created. And so the program was such that you had to test into the program. Excuse me. And it's still that way today, of course. But now, of course, with the internet, you can actually do it online. So it's much, much easier and streamlined. Before, you had to travel to where the test was being given. You had to take the test and then wait weeks or even months to get the results. Yeah, a lot different now. So as far as being a homebrew judge, it's really not that difficult a hurdle to get over. You still have to test into the BJCP. You still have to get judging points so you can go up in rank within the BJCP. But when you're talking about going to the commercial level, when you start judging at the Great American Beer Festival, World Beer Cup, or some of the other large festivals around the world, or competitions around the world, of course, the expectations of the judges, the experience level of the judges is considerably higher. You have to have a lot of years of experience behind you, and in many cases, they want you to submit letters of recommendation from other judges with whom you've judged. So yeah, it's a little bit different. The hurdle is a little bit higher.
And so what's next for you? What's your next judging competition this year?
I wish I actually had a definitive answer. As we sit here, I have a list of like 6 major international competitions, and I'm keeping track. Like, potentially speaking, I'm waiting for invitations from an Austrian Beer Challenge, Canada Beer Cup, Brussels Challenge in Belgium, the Iberian Awards in Portugal, the Tokyo Beer Awards, and then Mexico City in December. So I'm waiting for somebody to knock on my door.
Going back to beer festivals, having recently attended a beer festival, I do see the drawbacks of the many crowds, and just sometimes there is just a focus on consumption, right? And so there's folks like you know, that have interesting stories to tell, and just all of the history of beers. And I feel like you're not really getting that at those beer festivals, right? Unless you're lucky enough to run into you at GABF or something like that, or if you even are in the mood to chat, right?
Yeah, and if you can hear, because the din inside of those places, it's very difficult to have a conversation. But no, you're right. It's mostly about consumption. People pay pretty good money to go to those festivals, and so the attitude, especially among the younger crowd, which I understand, it's I'm here for one night or one day, whatever the case may be. I want to get my money's worth, and there are all these breweries from a different part of the country where I've never been, so I want to hurry up and go over there and try all those beers. And in all likelihood, they're going to get pretty inebriated. I mean, let's be realistic. That's kind of what it's all about. But yeah, I mean, when people actually want to spend the time and effort to learn a little bit more about beer, about the styles, about the backgrounds of the breweries, that's what makes it really worthwhile. I mean, certainly for me, and I would like to think that there's a lot of other beer consumers out there who feel the same way, that they would love the opportunity to learn more about beer. Unfortunately, a festival is not always the best place to do it.
I understand. It's a great way to try a lot of different beers, and at least get exposed to them.
So, yeah, absolutely. That's the best part about it. I always remind people, don't go there and just drink everything that you like. Drink the things that you aren't familiar with. It's an opportunity to try different things. It's, open up your palate, open up your mind. That's the time and place to do it.
I recently had my first grodziki. Am I saying that right?
Grodziskia.
What?
It's Polish. Grodziskia. Grodziskia. So did you like it?
Yes, I did. It was good.
Yep.
I had a little, almost like a slight smoky flavor. I wasn't expecting that.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful.
It is a smoked beer, but it's lightly smoked. It's not like the German Rauch beer style.
Yeah.
So it's much easier it's more approachable to somebody who may not really be into smoke character. But the interesting thing about it, it's oak and smoke, where a lot of beers are smoked with beechwood or applewood or cherrywood. It's actually smoked with oak wood. So it's different in that respect.
It's nice, that complementary flavor. And I have had some overpowering smoke beers. Smoke is kind of like spice. It's really easy to overdo it.
Absolutely. And they're out there. There are some beers that are really powerful.
Marty, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really great chatting with you and learning more about what you do, and having a few laughs.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for your time today. And if you want to learn more about Marty, you can visit nachelbeereducation.com. Follow him on Instagram. He's Marty Nachel. Any other places that folks can go to find you, Marty?
Well, on TikTok, of course.
Oh yes, on TikTok. And what's your handle there? Is it Marty Nachel?
At Marty Nachel, yeah. Just look for beer stories.
Great, excellent. Well, I like your beer stories, and I'll continue to watch those. And thanks so much again for your time today, Marty.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.